Welcome to the award-winning RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. It's Friday, December 22nd, 2023. Alex Barutha here with Shannon McEwen and Ken K-Train Kreitz.
All aboard!
Let's jump right into the news. The Western Conference leading Timberwolves beat the LeBron-less Lakers last night, 118-111, but they did fail to cover the spread for those who care. All Minnesota starters had at least 14 or more points, but the real story here, Karl Anthony Towns hurt his left knee in the final stages of the game. Still waiting on some more information, but he kind of limped off. Didn't look like he could bend his knee very well. Kind of like me when I get out of bed every morning. Minnesota plays the Kings next. Shit. I wasn't the one to make that joke. I'm sorry I stole it. Minnesota next plays the Kings in Sacramento on Saturday. Is it Naz Reid time, Shannon?
Yeah, of course. Of course it's Naz Reid time.
That's simple.
Much to Alex's joy. I mean, Naz Reid has been fantastic. So, obviously keep an eye on the news around Cat, but if Cat misses any time, Naz Reid has been absolutely fantastic on a permanent basis, and he's going to crush it if he needs to get more minutes in lieu of Cat missing any games.
Yeah, we'll talk about
Well
Reid more
said.
later. So I'm not going to spoil that. But I think it is time. Ken, to address
I'm so
what happened
sorry.
last night.
So sorry, but Shannon does not get to celebrate the end of the Pistons losing streak as Detroit falls 119-111 at home to a shorthanded Utah squad. Detroit has now lost 25 straight. Former Piston Kelly Olynyk lit it up with 27 points, 3 boards, and 6 dimes last night. Utah was missing 4 of their top 7 scorers and were playing on the second of a road back-to-back. Hey, Jaden Ivey, not bad in his second straight start. 5 stocks, 7 helpers, a 9 of 16 shooting, but he did have 5 TOs. TO is a general problem for the Pistons. They're third worst in the NBA in turnovers a game. John Collins started for Utah. He still kind of stinks. Had a meager 13 points on ugly 4 of 12 shooting. Did have 9 boards and 3 stocks. But really back to these Pistons. Shannon, correct me if I'm wrong, but weren't the Pistons favored at certain points during the day yesterday?
Yes, which I'm sure has to be a rarity this season. I don't watch the lines close enough to know how many times they've been favored. 3. Okay, so probably against the Wizards, maybe against the early season Hornets, which is one of their wins, and then against the Jazz, the visiting Jazz, who are very shorthanded and have also been playing pretty horrible basketball of late. The Jazz are 11-18, but I would argue they're not even that good.
And they're horrible on the road. Like that, they get all those wins at home, actually.
And as much as I like to gripe about Monty Williams and his rotations and his starting lineup decisions, the Jazz fans with Will Hardy have plenty to gripe about as well. It was nice to see the Clinic have a big game. Not a surprise either, really, against this Pistons squad. When we have to match up against Marvin Moneybags Bagley and Isaiah Stewart, there's not much to worry about. But seeing Olynyk get starts over Walker Kessler is mind-numbing to me, especially for a team that's not going anywhere. And also for a team that started Walker Kessler 2 starts, the previous 2 games. Kessler started, played over 30 or more minutes in each outing, played well. Exactly. And even last night against the Pistons, on the defensive end, he played really well. He was blocking. He had a couple blocks that didn't count because of fouls that were called.
Led the Jazz in plus minus last night, a plus 17 point differential, and yet off the bench.
Super weird. But yeah, on the Pistons side, there was a little bit to like. Cade, another gigantic game, 28 points, 7 rebounds, 10 assists, 3 stocks. 2 for 6 from downtown, got to the line 7 times, hit 6 of them. As Ken mentioned, Jaden Ivey, solid game, too many turnovers, and had some bonehead plays, but he at least played fairly well. My main issue is freaking Monty and his rotations. He had the second most used 5-man rotation.
I was gonna get here. Yeah, go for
Was
it.
Burks, Wiseman, Livers, Sasser, and Asar Thompson. 5 bench players all on the floor. They played a total of 6 minutes together. During the final stretch when they entered the game, both times when they entered the game, they would the leads would crumble or the gap would further between Utah and the Pistons. I really do believe having those 5 on the floor late in the third quarter is what ended up costing the Pistons the game. It's just unbelievable to me that a coach doesn't look at analytics, figure out that you need to have Bogdanovich, Ivy, Cade, someone on the floor with some of your reserves. You can't just roll out a bunch of guys who are shooting 25% or less from 3 with no available playmakers, no defense in the middle. It's getting hard, guys. It's getting hard to be a Pistons fan.
What I thought you were going to bring up, but is you make a good point regardless. On our daily lineups page, a very popular NBA daily lineups page on RotoWire, where there's on-off court stats and projected minutes and everything like that. You can actually check to see how many minutes the starting lineup has played together throughout the season and see the usage rates. And I discovered that the starting lineup that the Pistons threw out had played a combined 2 minutes together this season. And the starting lineup that the Jazz put out had played a combined 1 minute together this season. And I don't really get the logic there. But I'm sorry, Shannon. This was the one.
Let's go to rosier news. Alex, take us to OKC.
I thought you said Rosier news at first, but no, Rosier news. Oklahoma City ends the Clippers' 9-game winning streak last night with a 134-115 beatdown, as predicted on the RotoWire NBA show on Sirius XM NBA radio.
Bravo.
SGA had 34-8 with 4 assists. He had 6 stocks and only 1 turnover in 32 minutes. The man just puts up MVP numbers in his sleep. Chet Holmgren had the big highlight pass to himself off the backboard dunk.
He traveled. That was a travel. You can't leave your pivot foot.
They don't call that pivot foot leave anymore if you shoot the ball right away. It kind of drives me insane, to be honest.
Baloney.
I would.
Kevin McHale couldn't do that during his famous days. He had to keep his foot down.
I'd be in the league right now with 6'4". 6'4" Hakeem Olajuwon if I knew I could do that with my pivot foot. Chet had 23, 6, and 7 with 9 of 11 shooting with no blocks, which is interesting. I didn't bring this up on the XM show, but the Clippers actually allow, I think it's the fewest blocks to centers, and I was too scared to take Chet under. I think it was 1.5 blocks or 2.
Well, he's leading. He is 4th in the NBA in blocks with 2.7 a game.
He's been amazing. But for the Clippers here, no Kawhi, which was his first missed game of the season.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And
got a hip
Paul
issue,
George,
they say, right? Got a hip issue?
Yeah, hip issue, and Paul George returned as well. He had missed a little bit of time in 9 category leagues. The Claw is 5th in total stats.
Total stats. You always had to look at per game for the Claw, but now, no, total stats. Suddenly he's Cal Ripken.
I want to bring up a player from this game who's actually first in per game stats, depending on the rankings system you use. But in Basketball Monster, SGA is first overall per game value for fantasy this season. Now, my question is, are we ever going to see this guy hit 3-pointers at an all-star or like a fantasy star caliber? I'm just amazed that he's only hitting just under 1 3-pointer per game. He had 1 last night. It was just a few years ago. He hit 2 3-pointers per game. I'd see him pull up confidently. I mean, it's hard to complain about the guy who's probably the best fantasy player or definitely a top 3 fantasy player in most formats. But I really want to see more 3-pointers from him.
I think the better question, forgive me, Shannon, but the better question is, when does OKC replace Josh Giddey with someone who can shoot from outside?
Yeah, that's also a fair question. We'll see what they do at the deadline. I wouldn't be shocked if they move him because they'll if they don't, they'll have to pay him sooner than later. And, I don't think he's necessarily a great fit with SGA and Jalen Williams. But, I mean, you're right, Shannon. I mean, he's not like a terrible three-point shooter by any stretch. Even when he's stopped shooting them over the past 2 years, he's still, 33% basically. My only, I don't want to say a concern, but it's like if he's shooting more threes, is he shooting less free throws? Yeah. And are the free throws at 91% actually more valuable than any threes he would hit?
You can't gripe about SGA. Come on.
I have
first and per game value, as you said.
That's 9.
I know. He's great.
9 caddies first.
Now, before we move on to the next segment, also one other big game that we didn't talk about.
Okay. Yeah.
The Pelicans and my boy Trey Murphy.
He
had a spot start. He had a spot start last night. Zion was out, and Trey went off in 28 minutes. Went 10 for 16 from the floor, 6 for 10 from downtown. 28 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, 1 block.
Welcome back, Trey Murphy. What was Zion's? No, you can't guard anyone. What was Zion's injury? Chubbiness? Is that the illness? What was?
Ken, I would love to see. I want to see Ken and Zion side by side with their shirts off. All right.
I'm 54 and not making millions.
I don't.
Yeah, care. and Ken gets 2 weeks to gain weight. Okay. Before we move on to some fan feedback, some listener questions, we do have to talk about our friends at Underdog.
Please.
Underdog. It's the #1 fantasy platform for NBA best ball and DFS player pick'em contests. If you haven't tried Underdog yet, new Underdog users receive a first-time deposit bonus up to $100 and a free 6-month subscription to RotoWire with promo code RWNBA. That's promo code RWNBA. That's a great gift idea, by the way. You just tell your friends and family that promo code, and you're like, hey, you spend the $100. And then it's basically like me giving you another $100 on top of that. And you get a free 6-month subscription to RotoWire, which is a dollar value that honestly I'm not aware of. But it's really high, honestly.
It starts at 10. Yeah, very high.
Some are saying it's
definitely
one of the best investments you can make.
Yeah.
Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or download the Underdog app today and use promo code RWNBA to claim your free RotoWire subscription and deposit bonus.
It's a $90 value.
Thank you, guys.
That's code RWNBA for the $90 value of a RotoWire subscription, as well as the doubling of the deposit and the whatnot and the stuff that Alex just talked about. Go see our friends at Underdog Fantasy, who are also a wonderful, wonderful RotoWire client. All right, gentlemen, it is time for fan feedback, where we answer live questions through the YouTube and Twitter shows. Our first one comes from Roger. He says, who should I drop between Bilal Koulibaly, thank you. Cole Anthony or Kyle Lowry? I know where I would go, but you gentlemen, where do you go between the Wizard, Magic, or Heat guards?
This is a pretty, in my opinion, a pretty difficult question. I think Bilal's a really interesting long-term hold. And I'd be a little more worried about Lowry and Cole Anthony's long-term value, but they're better right now. Shannon, do you have a strong opinion on this?
Yeah, I think for me, it's between Koulibaly and Lowry. Cole Anthony, I'm going to hold for right now. He's coming off a big game last night against the Bucks, 46 fantasy points, 18 points, 11 rebounds, 6 assists. You had no Suggs and no Fultz in that game for the Magic. Cole Anthony, it's tough. His production's up and down because he's coming off the bench. Even while the Magic are shorthanded in the backcourt, they're still bringing Cole Anthony off the bench. But he's been productive in that role, averaging 15 points, 4 rebounds, 3.7 assists, and also hitting some threes, 1.4 per game. So right now, I'm keeping Cole Anthony. Kyle Lowry and Koulibaly, I'm siding with keeping Kyle Lowry. I I like Koulibaly for the second half of the season, especially if Washington moves out some of their older players, create more playing time for Koulibaly. But I do like Kyle Rowley slightly more. He's riskier.
So you're dropping Lowry.
No. I'm dropping Koulibaly. I'm taking Lowry. I value Lowry more immediately. So Koulibaly is getting the cut for me. But it is close between Koulibaly and Lowry.
All right. Next question, gentlemen, from James. Thinking of trading Vooch for DeMar DeRozan. Needs to help his free throw percentages. Thoughts on a Vooch for DeRozan swap, an inner Bulls swap, if you will.
That's kind of an interesting inner team trade. I think those guys are about equal value. I mean, in the past, I would have said like definitely take the DeRozan side, but DeRozan hasn't been playing as well this year. And to me, I think I view them fairly equally this year. And if you need one particular help in category or a position, I think that's fine to do.
Yeah, production wise, they're pretty equal. They're both are in that 50 to 60 range on a per game value this season. So really, like Alex said, if it's one category you're looking for, then you could be safe making that trade. You're going to lose a little bit in 3-pointers. I mean, Vooch doesn't really hurt you with free throw percentage though. He's at 86.5. He's a really good free throw shooter. Not a high volume. I think that's where DeRozan's going to help out. Higher volume of free throws, and he's a lock to shoot over 80%.
And if Vooch is your starting center, make sure you get some block shots from your forwards or other utility players. All right, gentlemen, that does it for the fan feedback section, which means it is time for the waiver wire.
The waiver wire. The meat of the podcast sandwich. If you are new to the show or just love hearing me say this every week, the waiver wire segment works like this. We get 2 regular waiver wire suggestions. That means they are rostered in less than 50% of leagues, typically Yahoo leagues, and then 1 long shot each, a player who must be rostered in fewer than 25% of leagues. As far as a game count goes, warning next week because the Cavs and the Clippers only have 2 games. So, you're looking at Isaac Okoro, you're looking at Sam Merrill, making some other, tough choices. Just keep in mind, they're not necessarily great streamers, but might be worth looking into. I'll start things off with what we saw in Minnesota last night. Karl Anthony Towns limped off the court. So we don't know 100% what that injury is. So look into that, or don't look into that. See what they say. You physically should not be looking at a Karl Anthony Towns knee injury. That would be bizarre. Do not do your own research. Naz Reid and Kyle Anderson are guys you can probably explore adding off the waiver wire. Naz Reid, 67% rostered. Kyle Anderson, 26% rostered. So if you average those out, it's about 50%. So I'm not breaking the rules. Reid as a starter last year averaged 17 and 7, 2 assists, a steal and a block, 33 fantasy points in 26 minutes. Kyle Anderson as a starter last year, 11, 6, and 6 with about a steal and a block, 30 fantasy points in 31 minutes. I don't know 100% know what they'll do here. It's possible they start Naz and then give Kyle Anderson some more minutes. It's possible they start Kyle Anderson and then bring Naz off the bench so he can play some backup behind Rudy Gobert. But I think either way, both of these guys are seeing more minutes and more usage.
I didn't know Kyle Anderson, he's shooting a career worst 10% from behind the arc this season. 10%. It really does. It's a problem for their offense. I know they won last night against the Lakers, but they really need a catch and shoot guy at the trade deadline. And they should make the moves. They're top of the West. But I like those picks. And I'm sure, though, you're not cheering for Karl Anthony Towns' injury, Alex, right?
No, I mean, I wish Naz Reid would play 40 minutes a game next to Karl Anthony Towns and Gobert, but apparently that's not good basketball. What do I know? All right, Ken, who are you going to?
I'm going with, I think we've had him in the waiver wire section 4 times a year for the last 4 years. Donte Divincenzo of your New York Knicks. He's only rostered on 11% of teams on Yahoo. He was inserted as a starter on December 8th, at which point he's been averaging 12 points, almost 4 rebounds, 2 assists, and 1.3 steals with great shooting percentage. The team is thin with injuries, so it means even more monster minutes for DiVincenzo. We know Tibbs loves to play guys. And the Knicks have 4 games next week. I love Donte DiVincenzo as a streaming option. We'll also get you some threes, steals, just nice production across the board for 4 games next week.
Yep. Oh, Shannon, you're muted.
I got this, guys. I'm a pro. All right. Good recommendation. We're going to stick in New York.
Okay.
We talked about this guy last week, but I think it deserves another mention given the developments.
Mm-hmm.
Isaiah Hartenstein. It is finally Harten time with my boy Hartenstein. With Mitch Robb out for the year, Jericho Sims is now injured as well. He's going to be out at least a week. The Knicks have to play Hartenstein. He was forced into the starting lineup, and he's performing well. Over the past 4 games, 32 minutes per 7.5 points, 11.3 rebounds, and 2.5 blocks. He's a monster with field goal percentage, 68%. Free throw percentage is really the biggest concern, 57% over those 4 games. But unless New York brings in another center, I would have to imagine Hartenstein holds on to that role for at least as long as Sims is out. But my guess is he plays well enough to keep Sims at bay and really sees this role for the first time, maybe ever. Hartenstein will get a prolonged look in the starting lineup. There's a lot of believers out there, a lot of hype within the fantasy basketball industry with Hartenstein. I'm not a believer, but he's actually going to get the minutes now. He's going to get the minutes. So hopefully he succeeds. He's rostered in 54% of Yahoo leagues. If he's available in your league, give him a look.
Well, we're going to see Randall at center a lot too, which is another reason I'm kind of keen on DiVincenzo. But Hartenstein, we know he'll be nice across multiple categories. Just wish he had done a little more when he started last year, the same kind of when Mitch Robinson got hurt again. Bummer Robinson's out for the year. That stinks for his managers.
It does. One other thing that stinks for managers if you dropped him is that now Talen Horton-Tucker is playing really well. 45% rostered from the Utah Jazz. He did sit out last night's win over the Pistons with foot soreness. Some people would say that's probably why they won that game. But in the 9 prior games, Talen Horton-Tucker, he's averaged 16 points, 5 assists, 2 rebounds, 1.6 steals, shooting 50, 44, 75. Jordan Clarkson, and Keontae George are still nursing injuries. Clarkson had like a thigh injury. He's going to be reevaluated soon, but I don't think there's any rush to bring him back. George is kind of day to day. Jazz have 3 games next week. We know the Talen Horton-Tucker story. Playing while he's hot, playing while he's getting minutes. And then when he goes back to playing like 18, 20 minutes, you can probably drop him in most leagues. Go ahead, Ken.
Well, before I go into my second pick, fans, if you like our videos, please hit like and subscribe below, please. I have another repeat name as well. Derrick Jones, guard forward for your Dallas Mavericks, only rostered in 22% of squads on Yahoo. He's been starting all season. Battled a little quad injury last week, which dropped some of his management percentages. But look, last 10 games, over 13 points, almost 4 rebounds, 2.3 stocks, while shooting a very nice 49% from the field, almost hitting 2 threes a game, and shooting a very nice 83% from the free throw line. The Mavericks have 4 games next week. So much like DiVincenzo, Jones is also a very safe, productive, across-the-board streaming option next week.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, with the Dallas is just they cannot be healthy,
Yeah.
and as long as he's playing minutes.
Even if you're in a daily league, he's a shallower daily league. Jones is a great pickup for tonight. Dallas, we'll talk about later, is absolutely decimated right now.
Yeah.
Luka's out. Kyrie's. This is just for Friday's game. Yeah, Exum and Luka and Kyrie all out. So I would not be surprised to see Jones have a big game on Friday. My second pick is a name everyone will be familiar with. Grayson Allen, guard wingman for the Phoenix Suns, 35% rostered on Yahoo. Grayson Allen has surprisingly been solid pretty much all year. I almost recommended him last week, but he was dealing with a minor injury. He's playing a career high 33 minutes per game for the Suns, averaging 12 points, 4.6 rebounds, just under 1 steal, 0.9, and 2.2 3-pointers made. Great percentages, 48.6, which from the floor, which is a career high, and 89.1% from the free throw line. 12 teamers, 14 teamers, especially if you need 3-pointers. Grayson Allen absolutely deserves to be rostered. Over the past week, he is the 52nd ranked player on a per game value basis. 10 teamers probably can avoid him unless you really are desperate for 3-pointers, but 12 team and 14 team leagues, he should 100% be rostered.
Thank you, Shannon. Excellent advice. Alex, who is your long shot pick? I think you're going with a former Celtic.
Former Celtic, Aaron Nesmith, 21% roster on Yahoo. Last 7 games for him, 14 points, 3 rebounds, 2.5 stocks, 54% from the field in 26 minutes. The biggest issue for him, kind of his limiting factor, continues to be his foul trouble. 4.7 fouls per 36. This was also an issue for him in Boston. But Obi Toppin just he's not going to happen. He's just
passive.
Yeah, he's passive. He's just not that good.
He can't rebound. He's 6'9". Get a rebound.
Nesmith is like one of the Pacers' only positive defenders as well, besides like Miles Turner, maybe Bruce Brown, but he's undersized. Pacers have 3 games next week, so it's not ideal. But again, Nesmith, if you're in a 14-team league, I think it's fine to just keep him on your bench and
Hustle
just kind of
guy.
see what
Help
this
your
turns
stocks.
into.
Hustle guy. Help your stocks. And nice percentages this season.
He's been really good. Yeah. He's closing out games too. Like he's not starting over Toppin, but Nesmith does close out most games for the Pacers.
Yeah. If you watch those New Balance ads in the back right, Nesmith, you can just barely see him at the end. New Balance signed him to a deal because they're in New England when he was a first-round pick of the Celtics. Probably regretting it.
Is he doing like lateral movement, cone drills?
He's at the end. They all cross arms and do like a cool team photo, and he's back right behind a legitimate star's shoulder. Maybe Murray. I can't remember. All right. Now, nice. Love that long shot. I have a super duper long shot. If you need point guard help, undrafted rookie Craig Porter for your Cleveland Cavaliers, only rostered in 5% of leagues out there. Look, the Cavs only have 2 games left next week. This is a speculative pick if you have room on your bench. But notice it was Porter and not Karis LeVert that was starting at point guard for the Cavs. Now that Garland's out multiple weeks with a jaw injury, Porter started the last 2 games, had 11 assists last night, and had a loss to the Pelicans. He had 3 blocks the prior game versus Utah. Anyway, big minutes in both games. Excuse me. Point guards are valuable. My apologies to everyone there.
Is this the first ever podcast sneeze? You've been doing this for like 5 years. That was
I've been holding that sneeze for 5 years. Yes, it finally got out. Anyway, point guards are valuable in deep leagues. Think about Craig Porter.
Man, I thought you were having a stroke.
Always a possibility. Always.
I mean, speaking of stroke, Craig Porter's great. If you're a DFS player, you're probably very familiar with Craig Porter. He had monster rostership the past 2 nights, starting in place of Donovan Mitchell. I love that suggestion, Ken. My long shot and our final waiver wire pickup of the show is Trayce Jackson-Davis, TJD, 19%. I love that you love it, Ken, and I love you. TJD is 19% rostered on Yahoo. It hasn't been. He's the guy who has stepped up for the Warriors in the front court, which with Draymond out. It hasn't been Kevon Looney. Kuminga's been solid. Saric, a lot of people. Saric was, he was a big part of the rotation earlier in the season. Had a very strong shooting stretch, but Trayce Jackson-Davis has just kind of come out of nowhere. He's providing the Warriors with a defensive presence in the post that they really don't get with Looney. In the most recent game, or back-to-back games, actually, he has topped 35 fantasy points. In those two games, he's played 23 and a half minutes, 12 points, 10.5 rebounds, 1 steal, and 2 blocks. I think this kid could really start to earn more minutes and steal those minutes from Looney even after Draymond returns. So he's an immediate streaming option for 12-team, 14-team leagues. And I do believe that he could, he's shown the last few games, at least he's productive even with limited minutes. So I think it's worth taking a chance on him, see if he can stick in the rotation long-term.
He was a victim in the draft of ageism. It's like they punished him for playing 4 years at Indiana. His senior season at Indiana was awesome. 21 points, 11 rebounds, and almost 3 blocks a game. Shocking he fell that late. But, hey, kudos to the Warriors.
Yeah, he's averaging 1.1 fantasy points per minute. That's a great mark. He's also already one of the better offensive rebounders in the NBA. We need a little bit more of a sample for that, but good stuff from him.
Let's end with some drop suggestions, and I'm going to suggest a controversial one that I thought would be a hot pickup, but Caris LeVert. First of all, the Cavs only have 2 games next week, but unlike Porter, LeVert has not really exploded with all this injuries to the Cavalier guards. Kind of a disappointment. And then I'll throw out there Malik Beasley. Beasley was hot early. Bucks only have 3 games next week. Beasley was a little dinged up, though I think you're pro Beasley, right, Alex?
Oh, I'm not pro Malik Beasley.
Okay.
In general, in real life. I mean, look, he's fine as a shooter, but there's a reason the Bucks defense is bad, and especially in the backcourt. And yes, A, it's Damian Lillard, but also B, it's Beasley. Again, he's fine as a 3-point specialist, but I'm okay with dropping him.
Yeah. Using Beasley as your perimeter stopper on the defensive side.
Yeah, that's a problem.
I seen him try to guard Cade against the first game against the Pistons was hilarious to me. I think Beasley, it's kind of the same thing we've seen in the past, right? When we've recommended him a couple times this season. Yeah. If you need 3-pointers, he's going to be a solid option. 10-teamers, probably not. 12-team, 14 teams could still hold. It just depends on your format. But if you don't need 3-pointers, he's not really worth rostering. LeVert, I'm going to push back on more. I think he's a hold for as long as Garland and Mitchell are out. Once Mitchell returns, which will be soon. Mitchell is just dealing with an illness right now. But LeVert, last night's game, take it with a grain of salt. It was the second game of a back-to-back, and it was kind of out of hand. New Orleans was pretty much running away with it. So LeVert only played 23 minutes off the bench. The previous 2 games before that, he played 27 minutes in each game, averaged 17.5 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, 1.5 steals, and 2.5 3-pointers. So,
Cavs only have 2 games next week.
I know. I get it.
The honeymoon's got to be over with Goga Batista. Got the DNP the other day for the Magic with Carter back. And when you guys added Caleb Martin to the notes?
I did. Because his minutes have been down lately, past 2 games. He saw 22 minutes on the 18th. 2 days ago against the Magic, he saw 18 minutes. And he scored a combined 7 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 blocks, 3 steals, 0 blocks. I don't know if he's like you must drop him, but I would just keep an eye on what's going on with the rotation. Jimmy Butler's out tonight, so he could have a big game. But I would just be careful. Be careful.
JJ's getting his way.
It's definitely something. Caleb Martin's definitely something to watch. He is still starting. Jimmy Butler also missed the most recent game. So it was concerning to see Martin only play 18 minutes. But yeah, Triple J and Tyler Hero being back are the two big changes there.
All right, gentlemen, that is the end of our waiver wire segment. We now move on to our Friday DFS picks with Alex and Shannon. Alex, take us away for tonight's 6-game slate.
Yeah, it's a relatively, usually there's more games on a Friday, but only 6 games today as the NBA stacks Christmas Eve. Okay, there are actually a surprising amount of injuries on this slate. I feel like guys were getting ruled out left and right. I'm like, are these real injuries or are these I'm going home for Christmas early injuries? I think the biggest stuff that's kind of happening, Doncic will not play and Exum will not play. In addition to like basically I'll talk about their roster. And then we have Jimmy Butler out for Miami. Obviously, you have Draymond Green out for Golden State. Nurkic is out for the Suns as well. Those are some of the bigger injuries. But on this slate in general, Shannon, what is the first place? Where's the first place you turn?
Honestly, the Nurkic injury was the first one I looked at, and I believe that the spot start is going to go to Drew Eubanks for the Phoenix Suns. He's the guy. He's the more productive option as far as their backup big men go. Alex, help me out with this name. Chimizi Metu?
Close. Chimezi Metu. Yeah.
Metu. All right. Because I didn't want to be involved in any of the Me Too stuff. So that's good. That's good. All right. So Drew Eubanks is the guy who's really stepped up when Nurkic was limited and not playing a full complement of minutes earlier in the season. They brought in Eubanks kind of as a nice piece who could roll out and play 25, 30 minutes and the production not really drop off. We saw that with Eubanks with like Portland last year. I think Eubanks is the one who's going to get the starting nod at center with Nurkic out. And he is an absolute steal on both DraftKings and FanDuel if he does get 28, 30 minutes, 4,500 on DraftKings, 4,100 on FanDuel. Also on FanDuel, he's power forward and center eligible. So you can get a little bit creative with your roster if you plug him in.
We should also note Washington at Golden State has the highest over-under tonight. This is a Jordan Poole revenge game situation. You only get one of these a year, cross-conference, all right? So take your chance to put him in your...
How many TOs for Poole tonight?
Is this 6? I don't know. I wonder what his prop is at.
I put the over-under at 5.5. I bet it's at 4 or something. I'm taking the over.
The important question is how many field goal attempts, and I'm going to say 36.
Kuzma's going to be like, hey, I'm supposed to be taking those bad shots.
I don't see his props up. Maybe is there some injuries we should be? No, I don't know. They're scared. I think they're scared. The books are scared to take any action on Jordan Poole, positive or negative. 246 over under in that game. So keep that in mind when you're building your lineups if you just need a fill in for pace. But yeah, I mean, I think tonight, if you're building your lineup, I think it's going to be difficult to avoid having Eubanks in there. And I don't think you mentioned him, Jaden Hardy tonight for the Dallas Mavericks, who is $4,900 on FanDuel. Like I mentioned, Doncic is out, Exum is out, Josh Green is out, Kyrie Irving is out, Derek Lively also out. So it's not going to be just Jaden Hardy. I assume, Shannon, as well, you're at least looking into Tim Hardaway and Derrick Jones.
No, Hardy's in my lineup on both FanDuel and DraftKings. Derrick Jones is an option. Tim Hardaway is an option. Grant Williams is an option. The only position or player I'm really not going to go to in Dallas is going to be at the pivot. I'm not going with Dwight Powell.
Okay.
I don't care. If Kleber were healthy, he might be an option. He's out too. But Dwight Powell, even, he started the past game or two and played 20 minutes per, but he's not doing anything. Even the most recent game against the Clippers, 17 minutes, 3 points, 1 rebound, 1 assist. He's not a guy who's going to rack up a ton of fantasy points. But anyone else on the Dallas roster, and anyone who gets a starting nod certainly is going to be worth a look. Those are really the two big teams, Dallas, and then the what the Suns do at the 5, where I think you're going to find good values. We joke about Jordan Poole, but revenge games. Let me be clear: revenge games are not a thing. All right. There's no statistical proof or evidence that players play better in revenge games. But if there's a type of dude who will have a revenge game, it's Jordan Poole.
And the bad field goal percentage won't hurt you, right?
No. And the fact that it's in Golden State, it's an away game for Poole. He's going back to that arena.
Tribute video? They got a tribute video, you think, queued up?
There's no way, right? There's no way. It's Draymond. Boom.
Yeah, does it help or hurt that Draymond's out?
Yeah,
for motivation.
I think it helps. I think it helps because if Draymond were in there, he'd be scared the whole time.
Can he sit on the sideline? Is Green kicked out of the building, or
that's intimidation?
Can he street close this game? I don't know.
I don't know actually.
The suspension rules.
And then outside of Poole, Tyus Jones, who we've many of us have complained about.
Not lately.
He's been really hot lately. He has topped. He had a 51-point fantasy game, a 63-point fantasy game, and back-to-back 33-point fantasy games. He's 6,600 on FanDuel. I think he's worth a look as well. It's not a great matchup against Golden State, but then we get to go to the Golden State side. And TJD, Trayce Jackson-Davis, he is 4,600 on DraftKings. I actually think he's too expensive to consider on FanDuel, but on DraftKings, I love him at that rate. Kuminga coming off a decent game. He's a guy who could have a nice outing as well. But looking at the star players, the expensive options for tonight, there are two guys that it's hard for me to move off of. First is Joel Embiid, who is the highest priced player on the slate. I rarely go with the highest priced player, but Joel Embiid is essentially two all-star players in one right now from a fantasy perspective. On DraftKings, he has topped 70 fantasy points 3 games in a row. And even if you go back to 8 games, he's averaging you go back to 10 or 11 games, he's averaging well over 70 fantasy points per game over the past 8 to 10 games. Absolutely fantastic. I don't know how you can avoid him, but I am probably going to go with Embiid on both FanDuel and DraftKings tonight. And then my last suggestion is Tyler Hero. He's looked fantastic in his 2 games since coming back from injury. 35.5 fantasy points and 44 fantasy points, 33 and 35 minutes. So the minutes, he's not going to be in a limited role, and Jimmy Butler's going to be out. So with Jimmy Butler out, Tyler Hero always gets a nice boost, and I like him quite a bit for tonight's slate.
Yeah,
I like the hero point.
Yeah, Embiid has played Toronto twice already. 31, 11, and 8 are those averages with a block and a half. It's very, very good. My only concern about the hero point would be I'd worry he'd get the DeJounte Murray treatment. But, again, the usage is going to probably be so high that it may not actually matter.
I just saw Cade Cunningham get the DeJounte Murray treatment, and he went off for 65 fantasy points. I think the DeJounte Murray treatment is a fallacy. I don't think it exists anymore.
Whoa.
Well, even when you get Murray assigned to you, you're still going to wind up with Trae Young on some switches, so it all balances out. It all balances out.
Right. Okay. Any final thoughts, Shannon?
That about covers it.
Well, then it is time to go to Ken's old man rant.
Arg! The Lakers hung a banner in the rafters for winning the in-season tournament. Are you kidding me? They won 7 games. 7 games. That's not enough to get you past round 2 of the playoffs. And to prove how meaningless the IST is, the Lakers have gone 1-5 since and now sit 10th in the Western Conference. 10th! I'm sure Jerry West and Magic Johnson are proud to share room in the Staples Center's rafters with the IST banner won by Austin Reeves and Taurean Prince. Arrgh!
The Pistons are going to hang a banner with their next win. So I think I'm all for it. I love the in-season banner.
This was due for an old man rant. This was
They had a spotlight ceremony and the black cloth that was pulled off of it as if they had just landed on the moon or something. Please.
Really good in 5 November games, man, I should say.
Looky.
I think we avoided any severely mispronounced names. There were a couple name checks. No?
I really messed up the rookie for the Wizards, who I'm not even going to say again.
Koulibaly.
Help me, Alex.
And
I don't even think did you even try to say it?
I butchered it. I butchered it like a Christmas ham.
Oh, okay. I might have tuned that out somehow.
Yeah. And then Matt too. I had Mac.
Well, also, is it Exum or Exum? Shannon said Exum.
It's Exum.
I always say Exum. Like he's zooming to the moon, and that's wrong.
Exhume, like you're digging up a body.
He was exhumed.
Thank you. I couldn't figure out why I was. By the way, just want to show off the elf sweater. But yeah, I couldn't figure that out. Yeah, thank you.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you everybody for joining us on the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast presented by Underdog Fantasy. Kent, take us out of here.
I do want to thank our good friends at Underdog Fantasy again. Thank you, Underdog. Let's go back to Detroit, where Pistons fans had this to say to the Detroit Pistons ownership. Quote, "Sell the team! Sell the team! Sell the team! Attention passengers, this 3-car fantasy train wreck has hit the end of the line. Happy holidays!"
No